When I was in my senior year of high school, 17 years old, all that was on my and my friends' minds were girls. There was one girl in particular in my physics class that I was really into. Her name was Tiffany. Some guys called her Crazy Tiff because she was super hot, but also apparently really crazy according to her exes. That's irrelevant to this story though. Basically, my best friend CJ managed to get one of Tiffany's best friends, Gianna, to agree to come hang out at some beach with him and I that night since it was a Friday and the weather was warm. The best part, Tiffany agreed to come with. This was it, my big chance with Crazy Tiff. CJ pulled up to my house at 10 o'clock that night. I hopped in shotgun and we went to pick up Tiffany and Gianna. On our way there, we agreed our first priority was getting me alone with Tiffany and CJ getting alone with Gianna. I was extremely nervous, but when Tiffany and Gianna got in the car, things were actually going pretty smoothly. CJ and I managed to make them laugh a bunch of times. By the time we got to the beach, I was confident Tiffany and I would vibe really well alone. I don't remember the tiny details of what happened after we stepped out of the car and onto the dunes, but I do remember the beach being completely void of any other people, and CJ somehow managed to go off alone with Gianna into the darkness after a few minutes, just like we planned. Tiffany and I took a walk down to the water and wet our feet and whatnot. Then we just laid in the sand and talked for a while. Things were going smoothly until Tiffany pointed out to the ocean. "What is that?" she said. I looked to where she was pointing but didn't see anything. I was laughing at her apparent delusion and got up to go closer to the water in hopes of maybe seeing what she saw. My feet touched the cold water, and that's when I was close enough to see it. There was a long, vertically standing object in the water. I inched a little closer and saw it move. I jumped out of the water and ran back to Tiffany. "It's a person," I said quietly to her. It was truly bizarre, the fact that anyone would be in the freezing cold water at this hour. Tiffany wanted to move because she was uncomfortable, and it seemed like whoever it was just watching us. Somehow it just felt like that. So we took a walk further down the beach until we thought we had privacy. We sat back down on the beach with nothing but the sound of the ocean waves in our voices. But Tiffany was once again the one to point out something. "Do you hear that?" she asked me. I did kind of hear it. It was like a smaller kind of splashing sound, but it stopped just as soon as it started. We looked out to the ocean, and I heard Tiffany gasp. The guy was out there again. I was going to go out there and tell him to back off, but Tiffany told me, "Let's just go." Low-key, I was hoping she would. I just wanted to look tough in front of her. We got back to the car. CJ and Gianna weren't back yet. Suddenly, my phone started blowing up with texts, all from CJ. Apparently, he'd been texting me in some kind of panic the whole time we were on the beach, and I guess I didn't have reception out by the water. He texted me first saying, "Dude, some weird guy is in the water watching us." And then, "Yo, some weird deformed looking guy is stalking us. Get to the car now." 5 minutes later, he sent a couple other texts, basically panicking over being followed by something in the dark. Keyword something, not someone, something. His second to last text said he was coming to look for us and to answer when I got this. His last text was, "We're on our way back to the car now, get there." He also tried calling me 3 times apparently. I called him back at once and he picked up right away out of breath, not even letting me speak. All he asked was if we were at the car, and I said yes. He said good, stay right there, and hung up the phone. Less than 30 seconds later, Gianna and CJ came out of the surrounding darkness next to the Jeep. He explained the best he could while trying to catch his breath that some deformed-looking creature walking on 2 legs was following them. I didn't know whether to laugh at what he said or not. I told him about how we saw someone in the water too. He asked me to describe what it looked like. I kept getting confused by his way of describing the person, as if they were a creature. I told him it looked like a really tall, lanky person standing in the water. He said he got a chance to get a closer look at it, and it was some kind of deformed humanoid thing. Tiffany and I looked at each other, and now we kind of nervously laughed. What he was saying was just too bizarre, but I think parts of both of us took him seriously. Gianna vouched for what he was saying. That scream made us all jump into the car. It was some kind of half-human, half-demonic kind of screaming. I can't describe it, you just have to hear it. Needless to say, we were all frantic in the car, asking CJ questions mainly. But closer to the end of the ride, we all grew silent. I guess we were all just lost in our thoughts about what just happened. To give you an idea of how quickly all this happened, we were on the dunes for about half an hour. After I heard that sound, that scream, I did start to believe CJ partially, but I still feel like what I saw in the ocean was a person. But CJ's way of describing who, or what was following him as some kind of deformed humanoid thing on the beach is what still freaks me out the most. I have a beach house in Florida that I tend to visit with my girlfriend in the colder months up north. In the warmer months, we'd still visit occasionally, but nowhere near as much since there wasn't as much of a need to. It was early February, freezing up in Connecticut, so my girlfriend and I took a trip down to Florida to visit the beach house. By the time we actually got to the house after the day-and-a-half drive, it was starting to get dark out. It was actually a long month and a half since I'd been there last at the time. The electricity, the water, and everything was already on since it was wintertime, and I kept everything on during the winter season due to our frequent visits. So all we had to do when we arrived to the house was unpack, take a couple lounge chairs, and walk 20 seconds onto the beach and take a nap. We didn't even check out any of the other rooms because we were so drained. We lounged on the beach until it got really dark. Then my girlfriend tapped my shoulder. I looked up at her, and she asked if I left that light on. I turned to the house and saw one of the upstairs lights on. Not just that, but at one of the windows in that room, there was a shadow outline behind the partially opened curtains. I looked at my girlfriend and she looked at me, and I think it sunk into both of us that someone was in that room at that window. I told her to wait there. I ran to the house as fast as I could. When I got to the back doors, when I started being quiet, I slid it open and shut quietly. And being that I was barefoot made tiptoeing a bit easier. I made it to the stairway and then halfway up the stairs before I heard a door shut upstairs. I went up the remaining stairs a bit quicker now and saw that the door to the room that had the light on was open, but the lights were off now. I went into the room which had the light on not even 2 minutes ago. I kept the light off though. Instead, I just used the flashlight which I had on the shelf ledge upstairs. Then I remembered the closet door. It was shut. That must have been the door I heard close, I figured. I shut off the flashlight as I tiptoed to the door of the closet and slowly put my ear up to it to listen. There was nothing but silence in the room and on the other side of the closet door. I wasn't sure what was going to happen when I opened that door, if someone was in fact on the other side, but I had to confront this. I grabbed the two little knobs and finally brought myself to yank the doors open, but it was empty in there, or at least from what I could tell, it was dark. I grabbed my flashlight and switched it on, and yep, the closet was empty, but a creak in the floorboards outside of the room caught my attention. I ran into the hall expecting to see the intruder, but no, it was just my girlfriend. I got mad at her for coming into the house, even though I told her to stay put. But now that she was there, I told her to help search the upstairs. We looked around in all 3 bedrooms upstairs, all the closets, and the bathroom, but there was no one. Then we checked the downstairs. Every room, every closet. No one. We had to figure that whoever was in the house somehow escaped, so we locked all the doors and looked around the house for any signs of breaking and entering or stolen items. But there was neither of that. So we brushed up and went to bed since we were exhausted. However, that night before we could even fall asleep, there was a click under our bed. I asked my girlfriend if she could hear that. She said yes. I got out from under the bed and got down on my knees. When my face got to the ground level giving me a view under the bed, I could see the intruder laying under our bed. I looked at him face to face before he crawled out and made a break for the front door. I couldn't catch him once he got outside because I was still barefoot. I also didn't get a very good look at his face because we only looked at each other for about a second. We once again searched the whole house to see what he could have stolen, but surprisingly, nothing was stolen. We couldn't even figure out how he broke in. We didn't call the cops. We simply moved on and did our best to enjoy the rest of our vacation. Our old town in Florida was right by a bunch of different beaches. My sisters and I would frequently go to the beach during the sunset hours because less people were there and the views were always beautiful. Sometimes we'd play volleyball, sometimes we'd go in the water, and sometimes we'd just lay in the sand. My youngest sister, Ksenia, who was 13 years old, wanted to go in the water one night. The sun was setting and it was getting dark out, so as the older brother and basically the supervisor, I told her to be back in 10 minutes. She ran into the water, and after watching her for about a minute, I looked down at my phone. My other sister, who was 16 years old, wanted to play volleyball. I was up for it. There was a volleyball net and a poorly inflated volleyball sitting next to it. It was good enough, though. We made do with it. When I looked away from the volleyball net, I couldn't see Ksenia. I looked every possible direction she could have gone in the water. I did not see her. It was getting darker and harder to see. I ran to the water to try and find Ksenia. I ran into the water, and when I couldn't run anymore, I swam. She wasn't in the water anywhere, though. But I saw a boat nearby. A big, luxurious boat, close enough to swim over to. It took me a couple minutes, but I got there. I hoisted myself up onto the bow, off some tiny step ladder, and I heard laughing below deck. There was a hatch door that was opened, and there were lights on down there. I called out for help. Then there was silence. I called out that I was looking for my sister. Then I heard Ksenia's voice from below the deck. She called out my name. I hurried down the stairs into the cabin to see Ksenia sitting on a bed with a Coke in her hand. Further down the cabin were two grown-ass men sitting opposite each other, looking at me. I grabbed Ksenia into my arms, and one of the men said with a smile that I have a very nice sister. The other man seemed to catch on to my suspicion right away and claimed that the two of them were just offering to give her a ride and some snacks because they saw her all alone in the water. I didn't even say a word to them. One of them asked if we needed a ride back to shore. I didn't answer. I told Ksenia to swim back to the beach with me. We got back to shore in a couple minutes, and the boat was far gone into the sunset. I brought my two sisters home and had my dad figure out what he should do. First of all, he was mad at me for not getting details of the boat or the men's faces, and he was right. My dad punished Ksenia and prohibited her from going to the beach past sunrise from there on out.